All right, howdy. Welcome back to another episode of World Bigfoot Radio, everybody. This episode, I'm very happy to have a returning guest with me and somebody that really has a bunch of other stuff to talk about, and we sort of did things backwards with this guest and had them on to talk about real specifics before we actually had them tell some basics about their background to give people an idea where this information is coming from. So since I put the cart before the horse, I'm going to try and reverse that now and see if we can sort of get a little bit of background on this guest who will once again be returning after this show to do another show on a panel discussion that we've already got planned and in the works. But in the meantime, welcome back to the show, Kat Hansen. Howdy, Kat.
Yeah, thanks.
Great to have you here again. One of the things I wanted to cover is your background. A lot of people don't know you. You haven't been on like lots of Bigfoot shows talking like some of the people that are around the community have, so they sort of don't know anything about you. And your experiences with Bigfoot started out when you were really little. And I thought it'd be interesting if you could start out with that whole story, sort of your background, how you came to be in that situation, how you're being raised, you know, sort of the area you were at and all that sort of thing. If you could just, you know, let us know and as Wes says, walk us into it. That'd be cool.
Sure, no problem. I've told this story so many times, it's like, where do you want me to begin? It's like this, okay? It's 1967, okay? It's almost 1968. I've only got a couple months to go till I'm 5. Okay, so I need everybody to understand that back then it was really, really different, okay? The mentality of parents was really different. They didn't keep such a tight rein on their kids, you know? I grew up with my dad and my uncles, and they did deer hunting every year. And we would go up to Mount Hood and go deer hunting. Well, we went up there, made our camp, and we didn't camp in the campground. You know, we always went further up into the mountains and camped out, you know, up in the, just in the wilderness areas. And we were up there and had the tent set up. And the guys were going out deer hunting. You know, they leave before dawn so that they can go get everything set up, you know, where they're going to be. And my dad told me to stay here. You know, you stay in the camp. You know, you've got sandwiches. You're fine. You know, stay in the tent, sleep. You know, you have your Barbie dolls. I brought 2 Barbie dolls with me. And they took off. So I spent the day in camp by myself, you know. And it was okay. You know, I mean, nothing that I hadn't already seen before. Done it many times, done in my own canyon. So I was like, whatever, you know, okay, I'm stuck here. So I played with my Barbie dolls, putzed around for a while. And this is, I don't know, I want to say like maybe, the sun's been up a while. So I want to say like maybe 8 or 9. And I'm hearing something.
Quick question. Were you like the only child that was out there then?
Yeah, just me.
Just you. So you got 5 years old. You must have got really bored then.
Oh yeah, really bored. I didn't have anything. Like I said, I had coloring books, but those were really boring to me because I was really intelligent as a child, you know, and so coloring books were like the ultimate insult to me. It's like, really, you want me to do this? So I played, wandered around, found some stuff in the, you know, bugs and things that I was checking out, and I was hearing like this crying sound, you know, and I'm thinking to myself, you know, I'm 5, almost 5, and I'm thinking, hey, there's another kid out here, you know, their parents are hunting too, and they got left in camp, you know, so I'm going to go find them. Maybe they're bored, you know. So I'm take off, you know, to where I can hear this sound. It's getting closer and closer, you know. And people need to understand this about me, okay? I was running around in my canyon and doing other things. I was very precocious as a child, okay, very precocious. I was just left to do pretty much to my own devices, you know, as a kid, you know. So this wasn't anything new for me, you know. I knew how to listen to find where something was and to go find it, you know, and it wasn't that far off. It didn't sound like it was miles and miles away, you know. I mean, a baby wouldn't sound like that. So I was looking for it, came across it, you know, jumped over this log, and there he was, you know, and I would call it a he. When I first saw it, I didn't realize it was a he, okay, and I've told this to so many people that they just kind of look at me funny and don't understand, but we had a hippie commune that lived a few miles up from my house. And this is what that kid looked like. He was dirty. He didn't have any clothes on. You know, his hair was all ratty. And I just, in my little kid brain, thought it was another kid. You know, I thought it was a hippie kid. You know, because that's what he looked like. You know, he looked like one of those
extra
kids.
body hair.
Yeah, well, you know, and that's something I really want to touch on here is when I saw him, I saw that he had hair, but not to my brain. It did not strike me that he looked, because people have asked me, you know, didn't it look like a monkey? And I'm like, no, it really didn't. You know, because he had some hair, but you could see his skin through the hair. You know, and if you think about that, think about human babies when they're born. You know, they're not born, most are not born with a complete thick overgrowth of hair, you know, down their neck and back and everything else. They're not like that. You know, you can see their scalp through their hair. And that's pretty much how he was.
Guys especially get hairier as they get older, for sure.
Yeah.
What color was the kid's skin?
Dirty brown. But
okay.
To me, it was like he needed a bath. You know, I mean, think of it as a kid, when you're a kid and you're playing in mud, you know, and you pull your hands out and you wipe them off, you know, it will dry on you, you know, and you see that stained skin color, you know, from the mud. That's what it looked like. You know, I mean, I really thought this was a hippie kid, you know, and so I was like, oh, don't cry, you know. And when he saw me, at first he was like scared, but then he wasn't. You know, he was happy to see me, and I just chalked it up to, uh-oh, you did something bad too. You left too, huh? You know. So we were sitting there, and he was fascinated. My dad dressed me in overalls. My dad never gave me a dress. Okay, never. I had overalls, and I had my Barbie dolls in that front pocket on my overalls, and he was fascinated with the Barbie with the long blonde hair. So I took it out and I gave it to him, and I played with the boy, and my boy doll, and we sat there and played Barbies. You know, I would walk it around and just talk away at him and things, because that's what I did as a kid. You know, I was like, oh, I'll make friends with anybody. It doesn't bother me. Mm-hmm. So I talked to him for a while, and he was fascinated with the Barbie doll. He chewed on her. I was like, don't chew on my doll. You know, that's the only one I got. Don't do that, you know. And I kept pulling it out of his mouth, and he was like smelling it. You know, pop the head off a couple different times, you know, and put it back on. I mean, just things that kids do, you know. Yeah. So we played for a little bit, and then, I don't know, he got really weird on me, okay? He stood up, and he started doing almost like little kids do, where they are first learning to jump, you know, how their feet don't really catch up with their body. You know, they kind of move their whole body up, and then the feet will come up. And that's what he was doing. And I was like, what are you doing? You know, and he was making these weird sounds. And he got really excited. And so I was like, wow, you know, okay, maybe, you know, he's got to go pee or something. I don't know. So all of a sudden, he was standing right there, and I was sitting on my butt still. And this, I don't know, to this day, I really don't know how to explain it. It was like a wall of hair, literally. Just bam, came down between us. You know, it came straight down out of the treetop between us. Just wall of hair. And I'm looking at the hair, and I'm looking at the feet. That's where my eye level was at, was about mid-calf and feet. Okay, I'm sitting. And then I looked up, and I looked up, and I looked up, and then the only thing that kept going through my brain, because I didn't know what this was bear. I knew what a bear was, you know, because I'd been with my dad and uncles when they had hunted those. So I was thinking bear, you know, and he's bouncing up and down, making these noises like he's so excited over it. And then this thing, when I looked up, it kind of twisted its upper body. I know this sounds so weird. I've since learned they don't turn their necks, but they turn their body, they turn their shoulders. And he kind of twisted, and he looked down at me, and then he smiled, and that's when I saw the fangs. And when I saw those fangs, and at that precise moment where it kicked into my brain, run, get away, I couldn't run because I was sitting on my butt. And I was trying, you know, crab walk back. You know, I had my hands down behind me, and I was kicking my legs out, shuffling backwards as fast as I could. And I tell everybody, it scared me so bad I peed myself. And I just started screaming and, finally got away from him. And then as soon as I started to shriek, little girls have the most high-pitched shriek. And as soon as I did that, he growled. He made this real low, rumbling growl sound. And that was it for me. I finally got my feet underneath me, and I took off, running. And I ran back to my camp, got in the tent, zipped it up, piled underneath all the sleeping bags because I was terrified. And in my little brain, I'm thinking, if I hide, he can't find me, So I stayed under there. Well, my dad and uncles came back. They got their deer, and they were busy hanging them and things, and really didn't pay much attention to me. And as the day went further on, they realized that I hadn't been out to eat anything, and it's dinner time. My dad finally came into the tent, and he said, "Are you sick? What's the matter with you? Come on, we've called you. Get out here." And I didn't really want to go. It wasn't quite dark. I want to specify that. It's not quite dark. We probably have about an hour until dark.
Mm-hmm.
And I finally came out, and I had to tell them what I had done, And I was terrified that I was going to get punished for leaving the camp. That's why I didn't want to tell them. But I also didn't want to be outside that tent because I was scared that he would come back. So I told them, and they kind of got this really funny look on their face, and they were talking back and forth, and my uncles were talking to me and trying to find out what I had seen. And finally my dad said, "Show me." And I knew I was in trouble. And I said, okay. It wasn't that hard to find my trail because I had ripped through the woods, And, seriously, I didn't care what was in my way.
Shred everything in the way as long as you could shred your way through it. Go.
That's it. Blackberry brambles galore. I did not care. I had them in my hair. I didn't care, And when they started following the trail, they realized that there were big footprints, and they were like, uh-oh. We got there, they saw it, and they looked around, and my dad looked at me, and he said, "Where did it come from?" Because on the...
No tracks leading up to it, just all of a sudden.
Yeah, and I kept looking at him, and I really didn't want to tell him that it came out of the trees because I thought he would tell me I was lying because bears don't fall out of trees. My dad told me that big bears like that, when we camp, if a bear ever comes, what are you told to do? Climb the tree. So I was, because it's white, it can't kid you. It's too big. So I really didn't want to tell him because I thought he would think I was lying. And I just looked up into this huge cedar tree, and I pointed up. And he looked at me, he said, "Where did it come from up there?" And I said, "I don't know, Daddy." I said, "It was up in the tree, and it jumped down." He said, "Did it fall down?" I said, "No, it jumped." And he said, "How do you know it jumped?" I said, "Because it landed on its feet, and it smiled at me." He just kind of looked at me for a minute and picked me up. He picked me up, and he said, we're leaving now. And my uncles were with him, and everybody was in agreement. We're leaving now. So
it seems like they knew what it was that you ran into.
Yeah, they knew. They had a very good idea. And
had any of them ever seen one before or anything up to that point?
My
or was it
uncle,
all just rumor and legend?
No. One of my uncles had seen one, and this is another part of the story that's kind of weird. They grew up down south, so down there they're used to them. They're everywhere in the swamps, and they're everywhere. And my uncle used to feed them.
Oh God, okay.
Yeah, my grandma, it used to drive my grandmother nuts. He'd say, "I'm going out to feed them." She's like, "Don't," and he would take all the scraps, that they didn't use for the chickens, and some corn and stuff, and he'd go out and he'd leave them bags, and he would sit there and watch them. He didn't interact with them any other way, other than to watch them. So he kind of, they knew what was going on, and we went home. I was in big trouble. I was grounded, and my Barbie dolls were gone, because I had screwed the Barbie dolls. I ran, and at the time they were expensive. Back then Barbie dolls were $4, and those were my two most expensive dolls that I had. So I was out those. I was very upset, being grounded, being, punished, having to go down and feed everybody, the ducks and the pheasants and things was not something I liked doing. So I was told that I was going to be doing that, I'm confined to the house, can't go out to the canyon, lost my dolls, so I'm pretty upset. I'm not near as upset as my dad and uncles are, though. So I'm sent to bed, and I'm like hating life. And the next morning, I get up, and my dad says, "You're up late." He says, "Sun's up. You need to go down and get those chickens and the birds fed." I was like, "Okay, Daddy, I'm going." And I headed out the door, and my house had a veranda, porch, balcony, whatever you want to call it. It's an A-frame house. It has a porch that runs around the entire house. When my dad built it, that's how he built it. And at the end of the front porch are stairs going down. And as I'm stepping down off those stairs, there's a log that my father had cut in half. It's huge, for a bench. You can sit on it. And my dolls are sitting there. And I didn't understand. I was just a little kid. All I thought was, "Hey, my dolls are back. Cool." And I go running back.
Home.
Yeah, I go running back into the house to tell my dad that my dolls are here, and I'm showing him. And I remember he got the strangest look on his face. He said, "Okay." He said, "Go do your chores now and get back up here." So I went to go do my chores, and when I went down into the canyon, people always ask me this, how do you, why would your parents have a canyon? That's what we called it, okay? I had 40 acres to grow up on as a kid, and we had a stream / creek that ran through the bottom of that canyon. My dad had bulldozed a road all the way down to it, and you could go down there, and that's where all the ducks and geese and everything were. So I had a wagon, and I loaded up full of stuff for the birds down there, and I went down there to go feed them, and it's not a paved road. It's just you take a cat and you bulldoze it. It's mud, it's dirt. And I get down to the bottom, and I'm feeding the birds, and I'm kind of commiserating about how miserable I am, because I'm grounded. And all of a sudden I get this really funny feeling like somebody or something's watching me, and you can tell, when you're, I don't know, I've always known it my whole life. So I was looking around to see what was there, in case I had to run. And that big hairy man was there. He was there. And it scared me to death because I didn't know what I was going to do. He scared me.
How far away from you was he?
He was across the creek from me.
Okay, so.
Yeah.
Still a ways away. It wasn't like right next to you, just jumped out of a tree this time.
No. He was, I want to say, probably about 65, 70 feet away, maybe.
Was it the same one?
Yeah, same guy. This is a big guy, and his name, as I was to learn, is Kyasa. But I didn't know whether to run and scream. I didn't know what to do. I just froze. And he's smiling at me again, and I emphasize that because on my channel a while back, I had done a dissertation, you can call it, on smiling, and it doesn't necessarily mean friendship. I've learned over the years, and as a kid, to see a Bigfoot, and I do use that term Bigfoot. I know a lot of people are going to say, "Oh my God, they hate being called that." I really don't care, because Kyasa told me a long time ago, they call themselves the people, so they're going to do what they're going to do. Okay, I just call them what I grew up being told they were, and I also call them Steyama, which is basically what it translates out to as the people. So that's what I call them. Anyway, being that small, and still I have seen it disconcert adults too when you get smiled at by these guys, because first of all, your brain doesn't really want to accept the fact that these things are standing right there in your face, and they do exist. And their mouths are not really made for smiling. Okay, they really aren't. They've got great big teeth, and Kyasa has fangs. Okay, not all the males have them, but some do. Some in the troop do. Besides him, and they are big. These are big people with big teeth. Think about your canines in proportion to your face. Okay, think about a dog's canines in proportion to its face, because they're going to use those teeth for eating meat. Okay, and a lot of people, either you have two camps, they either eat meat or they don't. Well, I got news for you. This group eats meat. It eats anything meat. It also eats anything grain, cereal, plant. They're terrific omnivores.
Yeah.
Everything. So when he was smiling at me, that was the first thing I remember about him, were those fangs. And I kept thinking, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I thought I was going to be eaten. And he reached down, and in Oregon there's blackberry bushes everywhere. And his legs, I couldn't really see about from the waist down. And he bent down with his arm, and that arm came up, and he had, I don't know how to explain it. It's a piece of ripped off bark from a cedar tree, and inside of the cedar tree are these real fine, like white tuber things that grow inside of them, and that's the only part of the cedar that you can eat. Otherwise, it's toxic. And he had peeled off this great big sheet of the cedar in his hand, and he had that with the berries in it. And he set it down in front of him. He bent over in front of him and set it down, and then he stood back up, And I realized, I just got this funny feeling that he wasn't going to hurt me. He wasn't being mean. He wasn't being mean. I thought, oh, he's sharing. I share too. So I kind of stepped forward towards the creek a little bit more, and he came out so that I could totally see him. And he sat there, and they squat a lot. And he squatted, and I was on the other side of the creek, and I was looking at him, and I came down a little bit more, and every time I would walk towards the creek, he would get up and walk towards the creek, like we were going to meet in the creek. But I didn't step into the creek. He did. And then he started to come across the creek, and then I backed up and kept going up, up, up. I was afraid. I don't like to be cornered. So I was close, so that I could take off and run. And he finally got close enough that he set it down on my side of the creek. And he stepped away from it. And I came down, and I was looking at it, and I said, oh, you got the raspberries and you got the salmon berries. Those are good, and I was like showing him. And then in my wagon for the ducks and the geese, I also had apple peelings, because I always ate apples. I had an orchard further back, and I put those out. I gave him those, and he smelled them, and then he ate them. And I was like, okay, so I can eat the berries then. I get it, And that's how that started. It took him about 2-3 months, and I realized at that point of seeing him every day and interacting with him every day, that there were others of him, and I didn't, because I had never seen them back there before, so I just assumed that they were his, they were his family,
Right.
And he had moved. It didn't dawn on me until I was like, I don't know, like 8 or 9, that it was a big deal, because he had moved his family down to my canyon, and these people were now living in my canyon.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
The power of the Barbie doll. It entranced the whole family, and they came down.
That's it. They came,
It's the blonde hair. That's what it was.
Yeah. That, and I didn't know until I was much older that they were worried about me. They were very worried about me because when Kiasa came to get his son that day, he realized immediately what I was, and I was a little girl in the woods.
Even though you were dressed weird like a boy and you had overalls on.
I've since learned they can smell the difference. They know what they can smell.
Yeah.
And he was deeply concerned that a little girl was alone in the woods. And then, unbeknownst to me and my uncles and dad, they had watched that day at the camp. And they realized that I was a little girl alone with males, all males.
On a hunting party, too,
yeah. Yeah. That is something that they hold very, very dear to themselves. Their females are not allowed out to run rampant. You know, they always have something there, someone there to watch them, be it a guard, be it a scout, or be it the alpha male. They're always there. There's one always somewhere close by, so that in the event something should happen to her or another troop comes to take her, they can fight for her and take her back. You know, she's breeding stock, basically. Okay?
Right.
And it's very important to them. And so seeing a girl child out in the woods by herself and then seeing a girl child with nothing but males around her deeply, deeply concerned him. So much so that they had followed me home, you know. And I've had many people ask me over the years, you know, well, how could they ever find you? Well, I equate it to people this way, okay? Sharks can smell a drop of blood in an Olympic-sized swimming pool, okay? One drop. Okay, these guys know the moment a hunter is near. They know. They can smell the gunpowder, they smell oil, they smell cologne, they smell clothes, sweat, everything. They know. They know the moment you step through. You know, these guys, as I said, have just evolved along a different path than us. You know, we went technology, they went nature, you know, and that's the way they are.
How far was your dad and uncle's hunting spot from where your little canyon was?
Where my tent was? Or where I lived?
Where you lived, in your little canyon.
Oh, I was thought you said cabin. No, it was 64 miles.
That's quite a ways.
Yeah, but it really isn't. It's not for them. It's nothing. Believe me, for them to travel in a day 30, 40, 50, 60 miles is nothing. You know, that's a slow pace. That is a slow pace for these guys. And people always don't understand that either because they equate that to a human. You're not talking about a human. You're talking about a being that is 9 feet tall, has a 9 foot, well, depending upon the size, 6 to 9 foot stride. Okay, let's see you go ahead and play this game. You know, figure this out. It's pretty big. You know, added to the fact that you've got compressed muscles. Your muscles are very, very thick. You know, these guys are huge.
Some people haven't had the experience of having to walk long distances, and I can give an example that I can quote from when I was younger and we were up in the Boundary Waters Canoe area, northern Minnesota, and our truck decided to get swamped by this one puddle we were going through and die right in the middle of it. So we didn't have any way to get back out again, and we had to abandon the truck and slog out of the puddle and walk the remaining 19 miles to the nearest road. And, you know, for a human to walk 19, 20 miles if you're not used to doing it, it's going to be really painful, and it's going to take all day. And that's for 20 miles.
Yep. Exactly. You know, so I didn't realize, and like I said, until much later, that that is what concerned them. Now, I'm going to throw into the mix here something that's very strange and a lot of people don't get. Being Native American, my great-grandmother, grandmother, great-aunts were told our tribe did not have an Alikchi. And an Alikchi is someone who is it translates out to soul eater, but that's not what it means. It's a person that understands the body, the human body, and when it's out of whack, we believe that to have the body in control and safe and healthy and sound, you have to have the safe, healthy, sound mind. And so that's pretty much what an Orichi does. She's able to speak with all, with everyone. She's able to understand and help and communicate. Communicate is a big, big thing about being the Orichi. And they were told before I was ever born that there would be one. We've been without one for a long time. And they told them that my father, my great-grandmother's grandson, was going to be the one who had the Orichi, and that would be me. Okay, so I'm little. I don't know this. Okay, I don't know nothing about this. The only thing I know about this is that I'm pretty much allowed to do things that other kids aren't allowed. I'm allowed to run free, do what I want. Sometimes when I go to see my grandma, the old people take me, which are the elders. They take me and they explain things to me, things about roots and medicines and things like that. And they take me out in the swamps and let me go find what I need, what I've been told to go find. So I'm thinking, as a little kid, that this is normal, okay? I was not told anything about being a Lichi at all until the day.
Let's back up a little bit. You're in the swamps. What part of the country are you in here?
Louisiana. Down by
Louisiana. Okay. So your tribe is which tribe are we talking about?
Jana, Chata.
Chata, okay.
Yeah. So we're down there, okay, and I'm allowed pretty much to do what I want. So, and that's about 6 months out of the year. I spend half with her and half with my dad because my mother had passed, and my dad was having issues being a man and raising a little girl. Okay, so.
Now, and where was your dad located?
In Oregon. So,
okay, so you were splitting the year between Louisiana and Oregon.
Right.
Wow,
right.
Lots of potential to get into trouble. No wonder.
Yeah, pretty much so, And, you got to remember, too, guys are raised differently back then, too. Little boys are allowed to run rampant, okay? They're allowed to do whatever they want, okay?
Oh, God, do I know that. We were given way too much free rein. We got ourselves into all kinds of potentially lethal situations because we were allowed to just go do whatever the hell we wanted.
Yep, that's it. And that's sorry, but that's the time frame, that you and I grew up around. And that was the mindset. Added to the fact that my dad does not know how to raise a girl, so he's raised a tomboy. And I mean literally a tomboy. I've told this story 1,000 times. My kids have watched me do it. My oldest ones were like demonstrate. And I still to this day demonstrate it. I would climb up to the top of a cedar tree, and cedar trees are huge. And I would scamper up that thing like it was nothing, and I'd stand at the top. I would stand at the top, and I'd start shaking it back and forth as far as I could get it to go. And it would literally wing from side to side. And as soon as it would start to wing one way, I'd let go, and I'd sit there and grab branches all the way down. Cedar slide. Hand slide down. And I was like, there you go. It was nothing. But the other little girls that I grew up around were just like horrified. What are you doing? You can't do that. You're going to die. That's a boy thing. Well, whatever. That's what I did. So I never knew growing up that this wasn't what I was supposed to do. I wasn't supposed to be like this, but I didn't know that.
Right.
So, long story
short. So when
you
were down in Louisiana, you were spending a lot of time down there with the elders, and they were teaching you stuff about herbs and all that sort of stuff. Plus, you were getting the opportunity to run around the swamps and whatnot. Did you run into any Bigfoot while you were down there?
Yes, I did. They were down there, and that was a given. Like I said, they're down there, and they live in the swamps, and I've told this to a lot of people, and they don't really understand. But the Stema have nose flaps, okay? And there's something that they have that humans had many, many, many millions of years ago, okay? They had them, but we have since, as humans, have lost them, okay? But they have nose flaps, so they are more than adequately able to go underwater and swim, okay? They can close their nose off. And down there,
they're even better at it than we are.
Yeah, especially in the swamps. They're down there swimming. They're having a great time. They can do whatever they want. And we have these little boats. They're called pirogues. And you kneel in them. They're real low in the water. They're like a little canoe almost, sort of rounded. and they put you a couple inches off the water. I want to say maybe 8 inches, 6 to 8 inches off the water, you know. And I used to take mine out in the swamp, and you know, with my little stick, you know, whatever I grabbed to push me along. Sometimes I just use my hands, you know. And I'd sit there and just paddle around and play around and things. And they were always there. I would see them. I never spoke with them or anything like that, but they would step out, you know, and show me that they were there. And sometimes when I was doing it, they would be swimming, you know, in the water, and they would come up underneath the boat, you know, and because I would put my hands in the water, like I said, to pull me, and they'd reach out and touch my hands and things. But that was about it. You know, I would see them, you know, and I talked to them. I talked to everything, you know, even my dogs, my cats, birds, everything. I always do. To this day, I do. And I was like, you know, I'm here. I see you guys, you know, but they never had that interaction that I eventually had with my troop, you know, up here. So
how long were you interacting with your troop before you actually started, like, speaking to them? They started teaching you their language?
They started teaching me right away because we were having some massive issues with food. And what was not okay, was to raid my chicken house and come running out with a chicken nest in your mouth, stuffing it in with all the eggs in it. That's not cool, okay? We're having some massive issues here, okay? I'm like, no, we don't do this.
That's a bit of a problem.
You know, quail nest, there goes the quail, you know, with all the eggs. Yeah, it was not a good time. You know, fun time was not had by all. I'm out there yelling and screaming. My dad's shooting the gun off at him, and I'm like, Daddy, don't kill him. And he's like, I'm going to kill him. You know, I mean, it was bad. It was really, really bad. So
at what point did Dad realize that these things were still hanging around and that, oh, horror of horrors, you were actually interacting with them?
It took him about 2 weeks, and finally, my neighbor told on me. That's what happened.
I was scared the living hell out of your dad.
Enough so that he stood at the top of the canyon and threw down 6 sticks of dynamite.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. Hucked him over the wall. He was not very happy. He was like, I want it gone. And I fibbed because he asked me straight out if they were there. And I said no, but I was fibbing in such a way I was taught that if you don't ask the right question, I'm not going to give you a straight answer. So I did it. They weren't technically there where he pointed. They were further up the canyon. I wasn't going to tell, you know. And when he finally, what started him to realize, like I said, was the neighbor telling that I had told her, and she was an older lady, and she had 11 cats, and I would walk a couple miles down to her house with my wagon, and she liked rhododendrons, and in Oregon they grow everywhere. So I would fill my wagon up and take them up to her house and plant them in her yard for her. And we were talking, and I told her that Kihos's wife liked the white ones. Wrong thing to say. So that started that conversation, and apparently she called my dad. And then that's where interrogation came in for me, you know. And my grandmother had been called because of everything that had happened, you know. And it just turned into this thing where my grandmother told my father, you knew this was going to happen, you know, and she's going to do what she's going to do, and you better help her to understand. Well, my dad, being my dad, was like, no.
That's all right. You explained to your granddaughter to quit hanging around to the Bigfoot, damn it.
You know, and this ended up, you know, with my grandmother having to come stay with us because my grandfather was not handling it very well. My father was crazy, angry, upset. It's just a hard way to explain it. And my grandmother,
I can't even imagine being in his position. I would be so damn scared and freaked out for my kid. I don't know what the hell I'd do.
Well, there's a point, though, where he had to learn to accept because when I was 6, I got grounded even worse than that time. And I wouldn't come out. And they make calls, they imitate everything. You can't tell them apart from other things unless you really know what you're listening for. And they were calling me to come out, and I wouldn't come down, And I had a balcony because I slept upstairs, and I stepped out on the balcony, and I yelled at him, and I said, "I'm not coming down." I said, "I'm in trouble," and I was upset, and I said, "And I hate you because you guys won't go away," And I was just being mad, being sick and mad, and went back into my room and shut my doors. I had French doors that led out to the balcony, and went to bed. I was mad because I couldn't do anything. And the next morning, my dad woke me up at 6 a.m. He said, "I need you to go outside and wash the house off." And I said, "What?" He said, "Get your butt up and go outside and wash the house off." I was like, "Who washes houses? It's Oregon. It rains. I've never washed the house, Daddy. What do you want me to wash the house for?" I walk out there, and my bedroom's above my dad's, okay? So you know what an A-frame looks like, with the balcony upstairs and then the porch running around the whole bottom of it, and that's his bedroom. They had sat down there and thrown mud all over the end of the house. I mean, end. And then, as I stepped around the back side of it, because it's an A-frame, someone, I never did know who, had climbed up onto the top of the roof, and they had splattered mud and handprints the entire way down the shake roof. Oh, so God. I had to stand out there and wash all that off with the hose, and I was just like furious, didn't understand what was going on, and by then my dad realized, she's going to do, she needs to be allowed to do, because that's what our people believe, so she's allowed to do and speak and say what she needs to say with these things, because it was already foretold, that she's going to do this, and by 6, I fairly well understood what was being said, and as I said, they had a real issue with the fact that I'm being raised by a man and 5 brothers, they had a real issue with that. So Kiyosa's females down there, his wife, I always call them wives, even though they don't marry like we do, they do have, they're monogamous that way to a certain extent. And his wife and the other females that were in the tribe, when I would come down, they'd let me see Kiyosa, for a little bit. But then they would come get me, and they'd shoo me away from him, and we'd sit down and they would do things, they collect salt rocks, people think salt comes out of a carton, but where it does, it's in rock form, and it is natural. And they would collect salt rocks, and they would wash them off, and then they would hand them out, and they'd sit there and eat them and things. I'd never eaten a rock before. I had no idea. Eat a rock. It's like first time for something, and so I did, and I realized that it was salt. I mean, they would do things. The females were collectors. They would collect things, but the males are the ones that would hunt. So they would be gone, and they would go do things that the males do, and we always had 2. Because if it was all the females and everybody was gone hunting, we would always have the 2 males that would stay, and oversee what we were doing. And, we'd go get berries. Sometimes they would go into the stream and they'd get the little crawdads, I don't know if anybody knows what those are. They get those. And they just showed me things, I had to learn little bit by little bit what all was going on, and you pick it up, because they also have a sign language with it, So you pick up what they're showing you, when they show you to eat, and put it in their mouth, and then they pull it back out, and then they say the word and give you the sign language for it, As a child, children pick up language really easy. Right. Really, really easy, and to these females, it was their job to take care of me, basically. They saw it as a way I guess, to make sure that nothing bad was happening to me, by the men. So when I would come down, they would automatically, the moment I would come down, I would see Kiyosa, and they would always stand off to the back so that they were there. And then they would come over, and immediately they would start touching me. Check my head, check my hair, check my arms. They were just things I didn't realize until I was much older. They were checking for broken bones, bite marks, things that males of that species would do to someone, to another. So they were like, let me check you out, and that's what they were doing. They were checking me out to make sure that I was not hurt, and to this day, they are like that. They want to know that you're okay. If you're alone with males, you're okay. They don't, my daughters, they did it with both of my daughters, my younger ones. They're real protective of those two. Their brother they witnessed one of their brothers getting mad at the other sister and slug her in the arm. That was a bad no-no because you saw this huge male come racing out of the woods and roaring and screaming, and my son going, holy exactly, up the yard, and they're just like that. Their females are not treated badly. So for them, they want to make sure that you're okay. And that I truly believe in my heart of hearts, after speaking with them now for going on 50 years, they just took it into their mind that there was this little female and they needed to watch over me, and it surprised them. I think it surprised them that I spent time with their child. I wasn't afraid of their child. Yeah. It's just something that over the years they have been with. I've been around them, been with them. I totally get what they're doing. I understand what they're saying, and we have had, not these huge philosophical conversations that people, who are very sarcastic and say, oh, she talks to Bigfoot. Well, I do talk to Bigfoot. I'm sorry if you people don't like that, but that's the truth. I do. And in speaking with him, he doesn't understand that people don't understand that they're not real. When I've had to explain to them in the past that people don't believe in them, the response has been very upset on Kiyosa's part. He beats his arm, across his chest with his fist and pounds his chest and says, I'm here. I'm here. And then he takes his arm and shows all of his people and says, we're here. We are here. So,
but
yes,
they do
we are
spend
real.
a considerable amount of time and effort hiding from us consistently, which makes you wonder why they can't figure out that we don't think that they're there, because they're really good at hiding.
Yeah. Well, not only that, you got to remember, too, I explain this a lot to people, in that one of my males has told me that when he was younger, he witnessed a man take another man out of his trunk and bury him in the forest. So to them, you don't kill each other unless it's massive. You can beat the hell out of each other, but they don't kill unless there's some transgression that's really, 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 really bad. And I've told this story before, in that there was one member when I was younger, I called him Stinky. And he didn't have a female, and he was really belligerent, very strong, real big guy. And he was constantly undermining.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, he was undermining Kiyosa. And the males wrestle, they do this thing where it's like a game, they'll what do you call it? You wrestle, and then you pick one up and you throw it down over your shoulder, you flip them, and they do this. And it's a form of exercise, competition, whatever you want to call it. They think it's funny, you know. It's just these big guys out there wrestling and pushing and shoving and flipping each other. You know, I think it's to burn off steam. I really do. And Stinky.
This is kind of scary to me, considering that Kevin actually taught Glag how to do a keto. I can only imagine what a Sasquatch later did with that skill. And here's Kevin having no clue that that's what they normally do, is wrestle around with each other. Oh, let's teach this young, you know, super powerful Sasquatch how to flip an elephant. Sure, he'll never be able to use that skill at all. Oh, my God.
Oh, yes, he will. He gave him a good skill because it's something that they do. All of them do it. You know?
Yeah, that's kind of why we're both leaning towards, well, you know, he might have taken over his own troop at some point. What with you teaching him how to do a straight kick and a straight punch and then how to flip things? He's a little bit more skilled in the competition.
That's funny. I'm sorry, but it is.
Oh, my God. I know. The first time he told me that, I'm picturing a Sasquatch stopping a Mack truck by punching it in the front going, what were you thinking teaching him that? So, but again, he's a teenager, and he's like, well, my brothers are beating me up, and somebody was beating him up, and so I wanted him to know how to defend himself.
No,
so, I mean, it's all perfectly logical. You don't think about the long-term effect of this.
Then that's the way they are, you know, and I mean, these guys would do this, you know, and I would sit on the rocks, you know, we had these big boulders down by the stream, and they were doing this wrestling thing down on the beach to the stream. You know, it's kind of sandy, rough, sandy pea gravel stuff, and they're down there flipping each other in and out, you know, and sometimes they'd flip them in the water and knock each other down, and I was up there just watching, spying on them, you know, and because I wasn't supposed to be with the males. And Stinky had been being a real butthead for like a long time. You know, as a kid, I remember it seemed like forever to me that he'd been a butthead, okay? And he just didn't do what he was supposed to do. You know, I mean, Kiosa would tell him to do stuff and he wouldn't do it. He'd get attitude. He'd throw, pick up logs, you know, and throw them at him, you know. And it was obvious now as an adult, I realized that he was challenging him. But back then, I didn't realize that. And they'd had this wrestling match before, you know, and this time, the last time, Stinky did these things where he was biting. He actually drew blood, and you're not supposed to do that, you know. And it was just, I knew as a kid that he was bad and to stay away from him. And he's dangerous. So I was watching the guys, you know, down there wrestling, and then Stinky came, and it was like it all changed. It wasn't fun anymore. It was serious, you know, and he was pushing and slapping and trying to hurt others, you know, whenever he would wrestle with them. And it was dangerous. You could tell, you just know, you know, as a kid, you could feel what danger is, you know, and I felt like I better hide even more. I mean, I didn't feel like I was safe back behind the rocks watching them, you know, so I made sure they did not know I was there. I mean, I was scared to death. And I was too afraid to run because it just turned into like this whole bad scenario. And he pushed Kiosa in the chest, and Kiosa pushed back. And then they were wrestling, and then all of a sudden Kiosa had him over like he's going to flip him, but he was backwards. You know, like, I don't know how to explain it. His face was not facing Kiosa's shoulder. It was facing out, you know, back to back. They were back to back. But Kiosa had his arm around his neck. And he kind of twisted. And when he twisted, he threw him over his hip and shoulder area. You know, I mean, it happened so fast. And I remember I heard this huge, it sounded like a tree branch breaking. And it was his neck. He snapped his neck that quick. And then he stood up, and you could see where he had blood on his arms and things from where he'd been bit. And then the next thing I know, Kiosa had him by his hair and was dragging the body off across the creek through the woods. And that was the last time I ever saw Stinky. That was the very last time.
Did you ever find out what they did to the body?
I did ask when I think I was 12. I asked because I didn't know if they had funerals, and I was told that he was taken home. He was taken home. And I guess, as far as I'm concerned, home may have meant where their original territory was, or home could have been buried. He went home to God. I don't know. I was just told that he was taken home. And that was the language, that was the term that I was told. He is taken home. So,
some
I don't know what
researchers have the theory, and there is some legend, myth to back this up, and seems to be like in the case of the 3s and 4s, it certainly could be that those ones may not even bury their dead, they may just eat them. And Lansdale down there in the south, when he shot one, immediately it started screaming and freaking out, standing in the river, and a bigger one came running out of the woods and bashed it from behind and broke its neck. And then the rest of the troop came out, and they tore it apart and ate it on the spot. And that's what he claims anyway.
Really? Because I have no experience with that.
And I just wondered if you had ever heard anything either way on it. That's his story. It was a Mike Woolley sort of thing, and instead of running away like Mike did and being lucky enough to actually make it out of there with not one but two chasing him, Jim apparently decided to shoot instead. And he plugged him one in the chest, and the thing wandered a few feet over to the edge of the river and started making a huge racket. And at which point these other ones came running out and polished it off. And I mean, gruesome details like ripping one of the arms off, beating it against a tree to tenderize it a little bit at first, and then just eating it. Makes you wonder if there's like variant behavior amongst different tribes of these things, and especially amongst different subspecies. Like I could easily see the Wendigo or the face eater type eating their own dead. I mean, there's 600-700 pounds of yummy meat sitting right there. Why would you bury it? They're pretty savage anyway. But I always just kind of wondered about the type 1s and 2s, because there seems to be a real split in the Bigfoot community there. Nobody really has any good evidence to back up their claims either way, other than the story, that I just related to you. There's one story where a Bigfoot had died, and the natives in the nearby tribe found him, and they kind of didn't really know what to do with him, so they buried him just like they do with a human. But that doesn't mean that's what the Bigfoot were doing with their own people.
No, and it doesn't stand. Well, with me, I do know this, okay? And as I've said before, my troop has had babies over the years, and they didn't have a baby for a long time, almost 20 years. But before that, Lemmy, my oldest female, had 2 babies, and they were both stillborn. And those she put in the trees. They put those up in the trees. So,
wow.
I don't know. I don't know what they do with the big ones. I honestly don't. But the stillborns were put up in the trees. So.
Well, again, I don't want to ascribe to them some sort of, ghoulish behavior that they're not actually engaging in. But there's lots of precedent for it being, it's the same thing some human tribes do. There's the tribes out there in the jungle that actually, consider it to be like an honor to eat their dead when their relatives die or something. If you eat them, then you take part of them in you, and they continue on being inside of you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly.
The downside of that, of course, is that it's also causing things like Kuru, a hideous neurological disease that's spread around by cannibalism, to go around and kill off members of this tribe. And it's very similar to bovine
mad cow.
Encephalopathy, mad cow. Yeah, it's very similar to that, only it's like a human version of it. And, that's been directly linked to that sort of behavior. So, again, if they are eating their own, I can see how that could have some bad repercussions in the long run, especially if they're, like, eating members of some other tribe that have some weird disease and then they get it. So, And I always wondered about that, too, when they're doing intertribal war, what they do with the ones that end up getting killed off, if they, wipe out somebody from an enemy tribe, if they end up eating them, or what they do with them.
I do not know. All I know is that growing up, I was told that the ones down south put them into caves, So I don't know. It's a strange situation there. It's something that they have preferred to keep to themselves. And I, as a person, have never imposed on them when they are doing it. I don't want to insert myself in there. The only time, like I said, that I did was with the babies, and that was because by then I was a mom, and I felt Lenny's pain. I felt it big time, and so I gave her the baby blankets for them, and she had said that she would put them in the trees with them, So that's what I take it to mean. I do know
that's one of the reasons I love you, Kat, because you don't, make up anything. If you don't know for sure, you just say, well, I don't know for sure.
I don't. Well, there's no point in me saying that, but I am going to tell people something that they may not want to hear, okay? Yeah. And it's kind of a good thing, but it's a bad thing to know. Everybody always says that they're looking for them. Well, I do know this about them. They like to take trees that have a big root system, and they dig down under the root tree, under the root ball, and they will put things in there. So you'll find a deer inside the tree, in the roots. You'll find cows inside of the roots. So, just things like that I have discovered over the years. If they don't want people to know they're around, they'll dig out.
I can see that working really effectively as cold storage, too.
Yeah.
You cramp something in the dirt under the ground like that, it's going to keep it from rotting for a while.
Yep, they like to store things in the roots, And like I said, I told people for the longest time that I ate cedar, the white stringy stuff inside the bark, and they were like, well, you can't eat cedar, you'll die. I said, no, they eat it, and they eat what we eat. So if they can eat it, I can eat it, and that is something I've learned over the years.
Like you were pointing out, you have to take the leaves and you have to pound them with rocks to get the fibers out of them and some of the plants. And, it's like, you can eat them, but you got to prep the hell out of them in order to do it.
That's right. And so people don't understand, a lot of them say, oh, no, they only eat this. I have news for you. No, they don't. They eat a lot of stuff there. Again, they've evolved and they've learned what they can eat in their environment. Whereas you and I, if we were to take somebody out there and dump them, they would be like, I don't know what to eat. These guys have figured out to eat certain things, to counteract it with, other chemicals, other ways. Like for instance, the skunk cabbage was a good one. Where I had seen them do it for years. And my biology teacher in college, I finally told him. I said, you guys all say this stuff is inedible, but they, I've seen creatures eat this. And he's like, what creature? I said, well, look, you have to pound it, and take it and smush it with a rock and then slide the rock, like you're sliding a tube of toothpaste. I said, but if you do that, you break up, it was my biology teacher told me, if you do that, you break up the crystalline structure that's in it that actually causes, the gut ache and makes it hard for humans, will kill a human. He said, but if you do that, he goes, yeah, you could eat it. And I said, well, there you go. That's why they do it. Thank you. So thank you for
telling me. That makes sense to me. It'd be like grinding up fiberglass with a couple of rocks and making it into powder.
Yeah, and they can consume it that way. These guys have so much that they've learned to do, that it's almost scary. If you didn't understand, and if you allowed yourself to be scared by them, by the thoughts of what they can do, it is scary. I tell people this all the time. We've made the perfect environment for them. We've given water systems that, here's a good one for you, Las Vegas, Nevada. water comes down all the way down from Mount Charleston. Okay, they've got the little river that runs there. The streams turns off into streams. They've taken it through aqueducts. They bring it right through the city of Las Vegas, clear out past Henderson. Okay, and in the middle of all of this, they've got it feeding a bird sanctuary. Okay, so I get a call one day because I lived in Nevada at the time, outside of Las Vegas, and I get a call from the bird sanctuary telling me, "Can you come in and talk to us?" And I said, "Sure, no problem." I go in, and what I go into is every coyote. Okay, along the trail through the bird sanctuary, they have these little buttons that you would push, and it would tell you about the animals in the area. It's for the little kids. And every picture they had of a coyote had been destroyed. I mean, these are tin signs, aluminum signs, right. And they've taken something has gone through and scratched it all the way through. Okay, scratched out the face of a coyote, and so they're like, okay, that was our first. We're wondering what's going on, and then, well, can you just get in the truck and go with us? We want to show you this. And I get out there, and they. Do you see that? And I'm like, yeah, it's a coyote hanging from a tree. That's nice. They're like, any ideas what this could be? Because somebody said that your Bigfoot don't like coyotes. I said, that's pretty much what's going on here. And yeah, they're down here because why? Oh yeah, you guys have made this perfect. I have said, have you noticed any depopulation going on? Well, now that you mention it,
yeah.
The ducks are being eaten. We've found a couple feet. We found a couple bills. And we thought it was the coyotes at first, but no, we've kind of found those up in the trees, and there's some really weird stuff going on down here. Can you mind coming down and looking? And I was like, no, I'll sit down and figure it out for you. And that's exactly what it was. They had a couple of Steyama that had trooped through the desert and found perfect sanctuary, for them, because they had fish, they had birds, they had crawdads, they had snakes, they had everything they wanted right there, except coyotes. They don't want the coyotes, So it was like, I just want people to understand that as humans, we've made it so that they can stay hidden very easily. They don't want to interact with a lot of people because, they're watching us. And even if you have ones that just troop through, migrate through to another area, they still watch. They're just like us. They watch people. They watch what we're doing, and they see how we are, and to them, we stink because we smell of chemical. Everything about us is chemical. Okay, so that's not a good sign for them. They see how we, live, and we have animals around us, and we have people around us, and we're in noisy machines and these things. To them, automobiles are just chemical. They don't understand why we like those. Growing up, I told the story of how not growing up, excuse me, I was already an adult by then. Kios is sitting on the side of the canyon wall, that leads down to the freeway, highway, and now it's a freeway, but back then it was a highway. And he would get down there, and he would sit halfway down, hide behind a tree, and he would shift gears. He would listen to the logging trucks coming by, and how they downshift, or upshift going up. He would sit there, and it was so funny as a kid. It was one of my favorite things to watch him do. He would make the semi sounds, because he would always say big growl, because that's what he thought they were doing, and he would mimic them. And it was so funny. And then as my own children grew up and would be around them, he would make that sound. And my boys were always just laughing, like, because they can't do that. All they can do is a little kid sound. And he could do it perfectly. They were like, he makes a good big truck. I was like, yes, he does. So it's just, they watch us, and they see the interactions that people have. And they also see the interactions, I should say, not the correct interactions that people have. Yeah. And to them, they've decided that we're deadly, we're dangerous. We have diseases, I had rheumatic fever as a kid. And when I was over it, I had lost a lot of weight. I was already very skinny as a kid, and this just about killed me. And when I went down to see them, after being sick and being officially cured, they wouldn't come near me. They could smell me. They would smell the air, and then they weren't coming near me. They didn't come near me for a couple months until I was, even after I was cured. Yeah. They don't want to be around us. We're deadly. And we create things for them. In some stances, we create things that are helpful, but in other terms, we deforest, we sell off plots of property that they live on, and we're always expanding. So to them, we're dangerous, So they don't want us around in the respect that they're afraid that we're going to teach their children, hurt their women, and just in general be dangerous to them. So that's the reason that I understand that they stay hidden the way that they do.
We're weird and inscrutable. It makes sense to me.
Yeah, we are. And I liken it to I tell people, if you don't believe that they're out there, just remember that you can always go online and look up a book. It's called Ishai, I-S-H-A-I, and it's about the last Native American of a tribe that lived in California, and he lived on the outskirts of California, downtown L.A. He lived on the outskirts of it, and they never knew he was there until he finally decided that he was going to come forward as an old man and step out and tell them about it. That's pretty messed up. So you had people that they didn't believe were there, and they had been there the whole time until he was the very last one. So.
Yep. Speaking of dangerous things, the last time we had you on the show, we started talking about the stick Indians, and you started talking about the face eaters for a second, which we weren't on that subject, and we kind of switched back to stick Indians. And we never got to hear the rest of the story about you watching the troop of face eaters across the valley. And for those that are listening, this would be Type 3s, Gugwes.
Yeah, they're not nice.
Yeah, can you share the rest of that story with us now?
Yeah, I can. My group pretty much moves with me. They may not move at the exact moment that I move, but they will show up eventually. And I really don't know why. I can only guess, and as I'm not a researcher. Okay, I'm not. I'm just a person who lives with them. And I believe that my group is able to do some form of telepathy. I don't know how they do it, how or why they do it, but they can. Call it for a super enhanced form of intuitiveness, maybe. But they really do. And they follow me where I've moved, where I moved from Utah to Nevada, and from Nevada to Arizona, they moved. And they grew, in Utah we had, I lived on the top of a mountain. I live on the top of mountains everywhere I go. I like to see what's coming. And I had a fish pond, where it was stocked with trout, and you could go up there and my boys could fish and do whatever they wanted to do. And we were up there in the valley. There's a deep valley that separated the mountain that I was on. There was a valley, and then across the, you can call it, I don't even want to call it a ravine. It's much wider than a ravine. It's a valley, It's I don't know. I want to say like half a mile, maybe a mile across. It's where it V's down,
Right.
And we were sitting on a ledge there, and we had collected a bunch. The group had collected a bunch of fish, and they had some some crab apples that were growing there again from a tree that was almost dead. I mean, it was late fall, and they were just kind of gathering stuff in to keep the stores going until they move again. I mean, they move and they come and they go. They don't stay stationary. They just don't. And we were sitting there. I was there with them, and my daughter and my two sons had done the fishing. And we were across that ravine, crevasse, valley thing, and looking out across, you could see movement across, and I was like, what is that? Is that sheep, cougar? What is it? Because it was really strange. It would show up white, then it would show up brown, then it would show up white. So I didn't know what it was. And my eyesight isn't like theirs at all. And he also gave the danger sign, and he held up his hand, and I mean, as soon as he held up that hand, everything stopped, everything. And I thought, what is he seeing? I didn't associate what he was seeing across the canyon. I thought he was seeing something below, below us. And all of a sudden, he motioned everybody down, so they all get down. And when they get down flat. I mean, they can walk on their hands, okay? I mean, they all dropped. That was just it. Sitting position to dropping, and standing to drop. So I'm on my stomach. I've got my kids on their stomachs. So I'm like, what's coming up the canyon? What's going on? So I didn't get it. So about that time, I realized that there was still movement over there. But now there's more movement. And now I'm trying to see what it is, to see around them, because the males are all standing in front of us now. So you have to peek between their legs. You have to look around and see, because the males will fight. That's what they are. They will fight. That is the best way to explain it to anybody, is that is what they are. They are fighting. So they're standing there in their stance, and they're not dropping. But the females and kids and me and my kids are dropped. And I realize now that what they were seeing was a whole bunch of movement across the way. And I'm looking through his legs, and I see what I think are other steyama across the way. And I'm thinking to myself, this is wrong. Why would they be so hostile? Why would they think other steyama are dangerous? They've never acted like that before when they've come across them, And then something stood up across the way, and up, and up. And I realized that it was bigger, fatter around than a steyama, and that it had, it's not a cape. I say cape, but it's not. It's the only way to describe it is their skins, animal skins that they put holes through for their arms.
Right.
And sometimes it's not both arms, it's just one arm.
Right. You told us about the one you ran into out here near Bridger, Montana, that had part of a probably a whole bear skin that was using for a one-arm old vest sort of thing. Right,
yeah. So this thing, had, I assume, because I don't know, because I wasn't there, all I can say is I assume, to make it real, to understand it in my brain, I figured that it's just a cow skin that he had.
Right.
Okay, because there was white. And that's the only animal I know that's white, has the possibility of being white out there, in the forest, is a dairy cow, So I don't know what it was, but he had this skin on, and he stood up. And you could see, when he stood up, I realized that's not a Bigfoot. Those over there, what I've been seeing this entire time, moving on the side of that hill over there, are face eaters. And about the time he stood up, there was this really loud whooping echo from that side. And then all of a sudden, all of that side, those creatures, beings over there, stopped what they were doing and immediately looked over at us. and that in turn got Kiyosa to growl, this roaring growl that he does. And that means we're going to fight. Excuse me. So I'm scared. I bring my gun with me when I go with my kids, or me by myself. But I don't
believe that the face eaters were a little bit worried at that point too. There's a whole troop of Bigfoot standing there watching them.
Yeah, watching
and they're not
them.
happy about it.
No, and I don't bring my gun to the meeting place with the steyama. My gun, I stop and drop my gun off and then go forward to meet them.
Right.
So my gun is probably, I want to say, an eighth of a mile away. Okay. And I'm like, oh crap! I got to go get my gun. I got to go get my gun. I got to get out of here. I get my kids out of here. And as soon as that roar came out of Kiyosa, the next one in line, which is Scunny, the one that I don't get along with, he's the next biggest male, he roared. And then it went on to Nali, and then Apap did it. And they all did the roar in sequence across the way to them. And when they roar, their hair stands up. It actually stands up, like a cat or a dog, the line of hair. But this is their whole body. It stands away from their body. I don't know. I've never understood why it does it, or it was just to make them look bigger, or how they do it. They have the ability to do it. But that's what they all do.
Have you ever seen, just, a side note here, have you ever seen the video of the alligators rumbling in the water and making the water dance on their backs?
Oh, yeah, I grew up down south, yeah.
Maybe the same thing going on there.
Maybe. That's a very good thought, yeah. Yeah, that could very well be. And immediately from across the way, there was another whoop. There wasn't a roar. It was a whoop. And I thought, oh, God, they were going to fight. They're going to fight, and I'm going to die. I got to get my kids out of here. That's what I only thought was, I got to get my kids out of here. The females were starting to back away with the kids, and they were climbing up into the trees. They took to the trees. And I had my kids, and I'm trying to make them stay down and move back and get away from things. It's hard enough to do with yourself, let alone a bunch of little kids, and I'm trying to get them back. Nali and Apap started forward, and they went straight down the hill. They went right down. They were going to go across. And then Kiyosa sent back the word run, and I ran. I had my kids running. And then the next thing I knew, two of my kids were being snatched up, literally snatched up and run with the other way, and that was my two girls. They took off running with them. And I had the boys. And they took to the trees, and they took my girls and went further down. And then right behind me was coming Kiyosa. And he stayed behind me the entire time. He could have outdistanced me easy. But he made sure that the boys and I got away. And then when we got down to the back side of that, where the fish pond was, excuse me, he went and explained that they have to run from those, because those fight and kill and eat, and more of those outnumber them and can kill them.
Wow.
So they run away from them. And I knew they were there. That was the end of the trip to the fish pond. My kids were not allowed to fish anymore, and they had to be back down by the home where I knew they were at, because once I knew the face eaters were there, I started looking around. It gave me cause to do this, and I had felt safe there, and I didn't think I had to look around, and then what I discovered was really disconcerting, because going down, it was just a man-made road, dirt rutted road that we had taken with 4x4s up to the fish pond, and then overgrown off to the left was like an old overgrown dirt track, and I was like, one day, I don't know why I went down that way. I'd never been down it. And I said, well, I'll just go that way. I'm looking around. I'm curious. I want to know what else is here. How far over? Do they come onto my property? Do I need to be concerned here? Do I really need to be concerned?
Yeah.
And I got back there, and it was probably about the size of 2 houses put together, was an entire, little cul-de-sac, and that's exactly the way to explain it. It was the road dead-ended right there. This track dead-ended into it. It was all rock and big, huge rocks and trees. And it was the size of 2 houses, and it was full of dead sheep bones, dead sheep skulls, dead sheep feet. I had, there was some elk in there because I had elk that came down into my yard. They were there. They were all in various stages. Some had been there, obviously, years and years and years, to very brand new. And I asked Justin, I said, is this you? And he said, because I didn't know they would do that. I'd never seen that on my property growing up. And he said, no, that's them, the others. And I was like, oh, my God. So now nobody goes back there. Nobody. You stay right down around my house, which is 1.5 acres. You're right there by my house. And it was terrifying to know that they were up there and talking to neighbors on, up the mountain. You have neighbors spread out, and speaking with them as time went by. Their sheep were missing, their dogs were missing, things were missing, and I knew it wasn't my group doing it.
The Gugwe's are eating them.
Yeah, they're eating them, and it was a scary time for me because I really, I had a gun in the garage, I had a gun out in the shed, I had a gun in the barn. It's like I had guns everywhere because I was not going to play games with these things. And nobody was allowed out after dark. Nobody's allowed out before sunrise. I have to take kids to the bus stop. So it's like en masse, huddling them all into the Suburban because I don't want them, I don't want anything coming at them. So it was not a good time for me at all with them. And I learned real quick what they were and what they were about. They're not.
What did the members of the Kios and the other members of the group tell you about them?
They are, they call those eaters of the dead. So, and they eat everything dead. Okay, that means
like we were talking about at the beginning of the show, probably including their own fallen.
Yeah, and they eat, a big thing with them is carrion.
Okay.
Steama do not eat carrion. Okay, they don't. I mean, if it's old, don't get me wrong, they'll eat roadkill if it's fresh.
Right.
Okay,
but not old, rotting roadkill.
No, and these guys will. They'll eat whatever, whatever. And I need people to understand that. When I say whatever, it is vile. I do know that they, like I said, they'll eat their own. They'll eat, they'll come down to the garbage cans, dumpsters around places on the edges of cities, eat those. I had someone in Idaho tell me that they were coming down to a rendering plant. They render.
Yeah, I bet that would draw, man. What a stank.
Yeah, they were coming there and eating, and he knew because he had several pictures of them. He was like, "Do you see?" And I was like, "Oh my God!" I said, "Please don't interact with those," because he said, "These aren't Bigfoot, are they?" And I was like, "No, not at all, not at all." So
those are what we use the technical term monster to describe.
Mhm. Yeah, those are ones that I'm scared of. I will shoot it.
Yeah, those are for real monsters. Well, what ended up happening with that situation then? Did those damn things ever leave the area, or how was that all resolved?
Well, they were going, as I figured it out later, because I'd never seen them before,
Right.
and they were traveling around that side to the other side of the mountain, over around the bend, which there was another city there. It was very small. I can't even call it a city. I call it a town. There was a town there. And I was like, oh, my God, they're on the other side of the mountain. They've moved to that side of the mountain. Let them stay over there on that side of the mountain,
Right.
until going into town, I do go to that small town over there, and I'm looking around, and I'm talking to people over there, and they're like, God, we got Bigfoot all of a sudden coming down, you know, and one of my neighbor's dogs, he watched two of them rip it in half and carry it off. You know, and I'm like, I know what that is. You know, I said, you got a gun? And they're like, oh yeah, we got guns. We know what they are. We'll kill it. We're not afraid of Bigfoot. I'm like, oh, okay, good. Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Because that ain't Bigfoot, and good luck with that.
Yeah, anything that's going to stand there in front of the window of a house and rip the dog apart, a St. Bernard dog, rip it apart, you know, in half and carry it off. You need to be a little concerned there. You know, that's not a Bigfoot.
No, and your little AR-15 isn't going to stop it either. It's just going to tickle it and piss it off.
That's the one. You know, if you have need of weapons like that, you need to come see me because I'll show you some extremely hot loads to make.
Yeah, at least go up to at least a 308. Don't even bother piddling around with anything smaller than that. If it hasn't got a 4 at the beginning of it, it's probably too small.
That's it. That's exactly it. And if you're going to use a 4, make sure you aim for the eyeball, okay? Put it in the brain.
Yeah, no kidding, right? Yeah, don't let it plink off the forehead. They're sloped and super thick, and it won't work. Jesus, you know, what a horrible situation. So the damn thing's finally moved to the other side of the mountain. That must have been a big relief, not only for you, but for your Bigfoot trip, too.
It was for me. Yeah, it was for me, you know, because, and this is the part that I tell people about all the time, and they're like, no way. And I'm like, I'm totally serious here. I lived at the mouth of the Great Forest that was there, and they had this, what do you call it, a day park, you know, at the mouth of the forest. You head up to the forest, you follow it up the valley there, and then it dead ends into the national forest, right? Mm-hmm. And they have like a day hike. That's what they call it, day park day hike. Okay, and all the trails are cemented and everything. You know, you can take your kids up there and you know, park and go for a walk, la-di-da. Well, they still have had a large number, an inordinate amount of women go missing up there, and in groups too, 2 and 3 women going up there, you know, and all of a sudden they vanish, you know. And me being me, I tried to do the right thing, and I go up there and I'm talking to the forest rangers. There's 2 of them up there, and I tell them, you know, the women that you're missing that just got snatched, those 2 women, and then the ones before that, and the ones before that, and the ones before that, you know, there's like 10 women missing. You got a problem. And I said, I know what the problem is. I said, I need to tell you what it is. And I told them. And they literally made me wait there for a state trooper to come so that he could give me a breathalyzer test. Yeah, and I was like, really? I was done. At that point, I said, you know what? I've tried to do the right thing. You know, my conscience is now clear. Screw you. I went back home. I went down the hill, told my kids, I said, you know, this place is getting really dangerous. Women are vanishing. I'm here with you. And I'm the only one there with them. I said, it's time for us to move, you know, so we're going to move. And that was when I moved to Nevada. I said, I'm done. You know, I'll go live somewhere else where I can see and it's safe, you know, and I picked out a place that was small at the time and was easy to maintain and take care of, and you know, it was okay, safe. You know, I didn't have to worry about the things that were going on, you know, until much later with my kids getting older, and I lived there for 14 years, you know. So it's just, I watch these people and I watch how they interact or, you know, and react around the stories about Bigfoot, and for the most part there are just 2 camps. You know, you're either terrified of them or you don't believe in them, you know. And if you do believe in them, then that branches off into, well, there are benevolent, loving brothers, you know. Yeah. And I'm here to tell you, I always say they may look like us and they may act to a certain extent like us, but their emotions are not us, okay? They are just not. Things we find funny and amusing, no. They'll go over like a lead balloon with them, you know. Other things that they find amusing would be terrifying, are terrifying to us, you know. It's just, they're just people, and they're a different type of being. I have said before that people always come at me and say, well, do you think they're what's going to evolve next into the next race when the world comes and goes, and blows itself up? And I always tell them, these guys that are here now, they're de-evolved. These guys, my people used to call them the sand people. And they had the ability to trade with other tribes. There were, like I've said before, there were other tribes that had one person in them specifically allotted to dealing with them, trade with them. For the most part now, these guys don't trade anymore. They don't trade with tribes at all. They stay hidden. They don't want to be seen. And that's not because they are dwindling in number. It's the fact that they have lost certain skills and they don't have a reason to maintain what they have already attained. So they're default.
Losing them. So now you said sort of a telepathy type thing. Are you talking about like a actual mind speak or like an intuition, something's wrong or something like that? Because humans have that to a greater or lesser extent.
I call this, the way they mind speak, I've always called it mind speak, is like a picture will pop into my head. I'm very fleeting, like when you're like, God, what is that word? What is that word? It's on the tip of my tongue. What is that? It's like that. And then it's real fleeting, and it'll be kind of almost like an echo. And then I'll hear bad man, or I'll hear father, or I'll hear something, whatever it is, whatever they're trying to get through to me. And usually they don't use mind speak unless they can't get through to me. If they are having trouble communicating a word or an action, that's when usually mind speak will come in there. They're like, God, you're so dense, you're not getting this, and then bang, it'll pop into my brain for just a flash of a second, and then it's gone. It's not like there's some mentalist, that can sit there and say, oh, I see in your brain you're thinking this, this, and this. It's not that. It's not that at all. It's a very flicker. I mean, just bang, it's there, and then it's gone. And I mean, if you don't get it right in there.
It's not like a conversation. It's like they're sending you an image or something.
Exactly. And it's very fast, very fast. And if you don't grasp that and they have to do it again, then annoyance comes, immediately. It's like in your brain you sense almost like a fear. You're
not going to be like having a mental conversation with them like a Professor X on the X-Men. Cyclops, I need you to go to blah, 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 blah. You're not going to be getting those kind of messages.
No, not that.
So, and then people that are talking about having full-on telepathic communication, with like hardcore philosophical concepts and stuff like that are pretty much full of it.
I'm like, yeah, that's where I'm at with it. I told you, the people that are moving their beds out to their back forest, in California to live out there and sleep with them.
Yeah,
I'm like, you're so full of crap. Okay, whatever.
Yeah, those people, they need to go do a research project on the face eaters.
Yeah, I think you do, because I'm serious. I'm just like,
sleeping
okay.
with the face eaters.
Yes, my life with them, my life in times. I'm like, sure, you don't. Here's exactly how your life and times will go. Oh, I became a pot roast today. Last week I was a ham.
Yeah. Well, they snapped my neck and stuffed me underneath a tree root system. I'm assuming they're letting me rot for a while so I taste better. More journal entries as they come up.
I'm tired of hearing that, and people that approach me with that, I'm just like, okay, no. You got to go. No. Go away, because I can't handle that. But you do have
your upcoming project where you're going to go live with the stick Indians, though, right?
Sure. They're my favorites. The big guys, the big guys are not my favorites. No, they scare me to death.
Could use your head for a cotton swab.
That's the one. All my curls, my dreadies, there we go. Okay, I knew it came in handy. I knew my dreads came in handy for a reason here, okay? I'm sorry, and I know. I know your people out there too get mad at me for being so flippant, and I'm sorry for that. But I'll tell you, if I don't laugh about something, I would probably cry about it because my life has been so strange. And people always say, "Well, you talk about this, and aren't you happy you talk?" You know what? If I didn't talk about it, I would go nuts. And the only reason that I do talk about it is because I made a promise to someone that I would talk about it. Because when he was dying, he said, these people think they know everything about them, and they know nothing. He said, please, I've watched you since you were 6 years old with these things. Please tell them what they are, So that's why I do it. And if I'm very flippant and sarcastic, it's because I have to be to understand myself, to keep my sanity, because a lot of times people say, well, you're so lucky. And I'm like, really? You really want this? You really want this on yourself? Because the downside of this is all the attacks that I have endured over my time from humans over this. It sucks. So I ask everybody out there to please forgive me for being flippant and sarcastic. I apologize, but it's my easiest way of dealing with stuff.
You got nothing to apologize for. I get to stand in the apology line in front of you because, let's face it, I'm just a smart ass, and I have a gallows sense of humor, and I use it constantly. And, if people can't stand that, then they're probably not listening to the show anyway. So I don't think really that you have that much to apologize for. You're kind of dealing with an audience here that probably likes your sense of humor because they can put up with mine. So you're way further down on the annoyance scale than I am as far as that goes. So I wouldn't worry about it too much, Kat. And, that's just par for the course, folks. If you're going to, if you stare into the abyss long enough, it starts staring back into you. If you go and fight monsters, you got to be careful that you don't turn into a monster. And one of the ways to deal with the stress of having to deal with these things and knowing that they're real is having a sense of humor about it, because otherwise you'll just freak the hell out. I mean, some of this stuff is just so creepy and weird. You just, the only way you can deal with it on a realistic basis is to just kind of poke fun at it, because otherwise it's just too damn weird and scary. A lot of this stuff is really scary.
Yeah, it's terrifying. It really is, because there again, these things, most people have like a 7-8 foot tall ceiling in their house.
Yeah.
Go look at your ceiling, okay? That's how tall these guys are. Okay,
and that's just the average ones. The bigger ones get bigger than that, and they're 4 or 5 feet across the shoulders.
Yeah, these things are huge. My hand, literally, I can take my hand and hold Kios's thumb. Okay, so we're talking. It's big. Okay, it's big. It's terrifying. It's just like handing them a watermelon. That's a really good one there. When I take watermelon up to them, I take watermelons, and they eat them like grapes. Okay? They pop the whole thing in the mouth. Okay? So we're talking seriously here.
Do they have a word for watermelon?
Yeah, they do. They do. And it's just a simple, basic word. It's oche. Oche. And it just means, oche means like delicious pink. Kind of. So that's what it's going to mean. Close to delicious pink.
Well, I can understand some of the words they use, you're kind of like guessing at what it means exactly. You just see the context they use it in all the time.
Right.
It could mean yummy or something.
Right. It could, yummy. Yeah, it could very well mean that, Pumpkins, here's a good one. My neighbors here, where I live now, are like, why do you keep buying pumpkins? I see you in your truck, and you just keep taking sacks, these big bags of pumpkins. What are you doing? I don't see them around your house. I'm like, I'm taking them up to the mountain, and then my other neighbor who lives down the way came down to my house, and he knocked on the door, and he says, I think I found your pumpkins. He goes, there's a whole line of them up in the mountains. He goes, but they've been stomped or something. He says, and some of them, all that's left is the stems. I know, I tried to get them with stems. They don't like the stems, huh? He's like, something was eating those. He goes, we don't have bears. I'm like, yeah, I know.
Somebody like pumpkins. Yeah, we're making our own great pumpkin patch that the great pumpkin can ride. Oh, that's what we're up to. Yeah.
Well, we tried that, when my kids were younger, to grow pumpkins, and my daughter was very upset because they kept getting stolen. They kept getting eaten. And I said, okay, Mari, we'll do it this way. We'll make you a pumpkin patch and then them a pumpkin patch. It didn't work. It did not work because they were like, the one pumpkin patch is not big enough. We need that one too. Sorry.
Grow bigger pumpkin patches, humans. Darn it.
Yeah, they like pumpkins, and that's why I say they eat anything. People need to understand these guys eat anything, I mean, I almost feel like, I went to school in archaeology, but my first major was ichthyology, the study of fish. And I used to sit there and I would think, God, we autopsy sharks and we pull out license plates and we pull out, screwdrivers and hammers and things out of these things. I wonder if that's what you would find in a Bigfoot stomach. Because, boy, they sure have eaten a lot of weird stuff in my life.
Yeah.
That's the truth. They eat everything.
Well, you think about it, if they're that big and they're omnivores and they know what they can eat in their environment, they're probably walking around cramming something in their face most of the time.
They're always, and the babies are the worst because babies eat everything. I have watched them. I never knew slugs were edible as a kid. I never knew slugs were edible growing up. I always used to just throw them at my neighbor across the way that I hated, chase her around with a slug and throw it on her. I didn't know that they ate them. I was like, because when I told my dad, I said, did you know you can eat slugs? He goes, don't eat those. I said, okay, Daddy, I won't eat those, but did you know you could know, Like, okay. Who knew? Who knew you could eat slugs, growing up? Who knew you could eat a leech? Didn't know that,
Yeah.
Who knows? So I found out they eat everything. Believe me when I say they eat everything.
Who knows? Bigfoot knows. That's who knows.
Bigfoot knows. That's right. He's not only into beef jerky, I promise.
No. Yeah, that's only a life-saving measure at best. When you're fleeing from Bigfoot and you want to slow him down, you throw a whole handful of Jack Link's beef jerky over your shoulder.
Yeah,
Give him
there you
something
go.
to stop and eat while you're running away. That's what it's for, I figure, anyway. That's part of your self-protection kit if you're out there Bigfooting. Your sticks of beef jerky you can whip over your shoulder as you're fleeing wildly. Slow Bigfoot down a little bit. How do I get it out of this plastic stuff? I'll just eat all of it.
Just eat it all. I will make you laugh, though, because you understand me better than most. Growing up, I had a playhouse that my dad kept all of his survivalist meals in, the C rations, K rations, all that crap.
Right.
And I tried as a child to see if they would eat those. You just add water, right? You're supposed to be able to eat them and just add water and eat them. Those are the one things that they wouldn't eat.
Well, they agree with the troops then too. No, this is not edible. No,
yeah,
take that.
right. No.
Enjoy all that, military veterans, because these are things that can eat like rocks and slugs, and they think military meals are inedible. So you absolutely have somebody backing you up on that. That's an expert in what's edible and what isn't.
I still remember. I sat there, and it was so funny because etiquette between them, it's not usually etiquette, okay? If they don't like something, they usually spit it out, just away it goes, right? This was spat out, and then
what
very
would
calmly.
fall into that category? Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And he spit it out, and he very casually just kind of used his hand. He was sitting on his butt, and he used his hand, and he just very casually pushed it away from him, and then he kind of flipped the dirt over it and went, ugh. I went, oh, okay. I don't like that either. It's not very good, is it?
No, the military has been getting that same sort of review for decades now. It's kind of bizarre. Not usually for Bigfoot, though.
Exactly, I'm like, there you go. So, of course, growing up, I went home and told Dad, you know what, Dad, the tuna casserole, they don't like that. It's yucky. Okay, the chicken stuff, he's like, Catherine, quit eating those. Those are for when the world goes. I said, Daddy, if Bigfoot won't eat it, nobody will eat it. Okay.
Yeah.
I go,
just because the world ended doesn't mean we should suffer, Dad. Even Bigfoot won't eat that stuff. You don't have to worry about them raiding your food supply, Dad. They're not going to want to eat it.
No, the only thing they want in my food supply in there is my bag of marshmallows all the time that you say I'm not supposed to have.
It's marshmallows.
That's it. Oh.
Well, have you heard any of the the ongoing show that I've been doing with Kevin here about his interaction with Glag over the 5 years that they were hanging out. You got any comments on that? Because I know he's a fan of yours, and he's really interested in talking to you at some point.
I feel very, very sad for him, you know that, because he lost a friend. And I just feel horrible for him, you know, to not be able to continue that, because I always say I am my brother's keeper, and I consider these guys my brothers. I really do. And it's very disturbing to me that he has no more contact with him. I can only imagine what that would be like, you know, really.
Like
it's
losing
horrible.
Your best friend. Yeah.
It really is, you know, and people will probably have a hard time with that, but it's the truth. You know, he interacted with him and he made a bond with him. And these guys do understand us. You know, they get us in that, you know, when you're one-on-one with them and you're talking with them and communicating, you really do look at them as another person.
Yeah.
You know, you don't look at them as some hulking animal, you know, and I get so annoyed with people when they tell me, oh, it's just an animal. I'm like, no, it's not an animal. You know, and I'm like, you want to fight, we'll fight, you know, because no, it's not an animal, and don't treat it like that.
No.
You know, because when you're dealing with them, it's a whole different way of looking at them. You forget, you know. I'm sure they're bigger than you, but you get so used to it. I have that problem with my dogs, okay? I have Mastiffs, and people always say, oh, my God, to see you walking with those huge dogs, you know, oh, my God, you got a 175-pound pit bull. You know, I'm like, well, yeah. You know, they're not that big because I'm so used to them. You know,
you're used
I don't
to gigantic, not just big.
Right. You know, and so I see the big guy, you know, I deal with Justin and the other guys, and I'm like, to me, they're my brothers, you know, and it doesn't register to me that they're that big until something happens to make it register, you know, and then I'm like, oh, crud, you know. So, yeah, I really feel for him. I really do, and I really do want to speak with him because I understand what he's going through, because Lemmy is very old, and I don't know what I'm going to do when she passes, because I really have bonded with her over my entire life, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I do.
Well, I feel sorry for him, too. I mean, that's a bad situation. I guess the only bright side of it is that he achieved his goal. I mean, you would know the reference for Born Free.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
That's what he was looking at, too. He, you know, here's this you know, solo Sasquatch. It's a young one. I'm having to help keep it alive, and I want to give it enough skills that it can, like, go completely back into the wild and have nothing to do with humans and be fine on its own again, and, you know, get it to join some other troop or something. And that was pretty much his whole goal all along. So when it actually ended up happening, I mean, it was like, yay, he got what he was trying to achieve, but he wasn't happy about it.
I just want to talk to him. That's all. I want to talk to him so that way, you know, he can.
Yeah.
Hopefully can make him feel somewhat better, you know, about what's going on.
Well, you're lucky that you can still continue to interact with the ones that you're dealing with now. He lives far away from where he grew up, and so he's not even around that area anymore.
Around that area,
and then, yeah, you know, Taylor also is a big fan of yours and very interested in some of the interactions you've had, since he's now got an ongoing interaction with this other troop over there where he's living with his buddy Scooter.
Scooter. I do love that name.
Yeah, I know, it's hilarious. He's a 9-foot Bigfoot. His name is Scooter. Not his real name. He actually knows what Scooter's real Bigfoot name is, but we don't say it on the air. We just call him Scooter.
Right. No, I call Bratis, you know, and I do know what his Bigfoot name is, but he's been Bratis to me since he was born.
Bratis.
You know.
Yeah, I kind of like your names, like Bratis and Stinky. Those are kind of good descriptive names anyway.
Well, I call Bratis, you know, because I have my 7 kids plus 4 fosters that I've raised over the years, you know, so it's like this baby came into this world and he was just ultimate prat, okay, and he's now a teenager, and I'm not going to lie, there's been a couple times when I've left down off the mountain and called him an effing butthead. I'm just like, there you go, butthead, because I don't deal well with teenagers anymore. I'm old, and I'm like, you're not mine. If you were mine, you would not be acting like that, and he's just, he went from Braddock to King Butthead,
Crowned King Butthead, wow.
Yeah, very descriptive, huh?
Yeah, I'm sure you appreciate it. You should explain what the name means sometime.
I've done it. I've grabbed my butt. A couple different times and lifted my leg and went, like that to him. Don't talk to me. I give him the sign, which is my mouth. Like I'm putting food in my mouth, and I close it and away from me. And then he's like, "Yeah, I got it." I'm like, "Shut up and get away from me."
you brat, you horrible bratness. Well, I think it's good to get some of this information about what people that have interacted with and what they have to say, because they're the closest contacts that we've had with these things, and what the interactors have to say bears a lot more listening to than what some of these other people have to say, as far as I'm concerned. So, as usual, love having you on the show. Super glad to have you back again. We got an upcoming show here that we're working on right now that we're putting together. We're going to have Dave the Exorcist and Kat both on the same show, talking about a special topic, and we're going to leave you in suspense about what that is. But it's going to be totally gripping and amazing, and you won't want to miss it. Bring your old people in their wheelchairs around to where the radio is. Strap your kids to the couch so they can't escape. Force everyone to listen to it. No, you don't have to do that. But I'd appreciate it. Multiple listens don't hurt either. It's always a good thing. I like multiple listens.
Yeah.
But anyway, well, we got to get going here. We're running low on time. Once again, sorry, folks. Show's got to come to an end at some point. But return with us for the next episode. We're going to be continuing the Glag Saga until we get to the end of that whole thing. And in the meantime, there will be occasional shows like this to have, something else to listen to. I mean, I love the Glag Saga, but my God, it's going to go on for like 2 months, guys. Come on, I got to do another show occasionally here. And love you, Kat. Thanks for being on the show again. And to everybody else out there, be kind to each other. Always be safe. Safety first, last, and always. And whatever you do, please do not hug the Wookiees. Bye, everybody.